Emotional well-being after 60 is often measured by stability. Life no longer feels chaotic. There are fewer emotional spikes, fewer moments of urgency. Days move forward with a sense of predictability that once felt distant and hard-earned. For many, this calm is not only welcome, it feels deserved. After decades of responsibility, of reacting to other people's needs, of navigating constant demands, reaching a stage where emotions feel manageable can seem like progress. There is pride in not being easily shaken, in handling daily life without emotional turbulence. Feeling fine becomes a quiet achievement, but this definition of well-being carries an assumption that calm automatically means balance. The absence of distress signals emotional health. Over time, this assumption becomes the baseline against which all inner experience is measured. As long as nothing feels wrong, there is little reason to look closer. What makes this stage complex is that nothing appears broken. Routines function. Decisions are made with clarity. Independence remains intact. Emotional life feels orderly, contained, and efficient. There is no obvious pain asking to be addressed, and yet, this very smoothness can hide change. When emotional well-being is defined primarily by the absence of discomfort, subtler shifts become invisible. The inner world may be quieter, but quiet is not always the same as full. Feeling fine does not necessarily mean feeling deeply connected to experience. It often simply means nothing is demanding attention. Many older adults notice that. Days pass without leaving a strong emotional impression. Events are registered, but not absorbed. Conversations occur, but do not linger internally. Pleasures are present, but muted. None of this feels troubling enough to name. It feels like maturity. There is also a cultural expectation at play. Later, life is often associated with composure and restraint. Strong emotional reactions are seen as unnecessary, even inappropriate. Calmness is praised. Emotional neutrality is interpreted as wisdom. Within this framework, noticing less emotional response can feel like confirmation that one is aging well. Over time, this interpretation becomes self-reinforcing. When emotional responses soften, they are not questioned, they are normalized. The inner landscape changes quietly, without triggering concern, because nothing about it feels disruptive. Another reason these shifts are overlooked is comparison. Earlier life is remembered as busier, louder, and more emotionally charged. In contrast, the present feels peaceful, but comparison alone does not capture what has changed. Peace and emotional richness are not opposites, yet they are often treated as such. Feeling fine becomes a place to settle. It provides reassurance. It avoids unnecessary questioning. And in many ways, it serves an important function. It allows life to continue smoothly, but it also narrows attention. When nothing feels wrong, curiosity about the inner world fades. This is where subtle changes take root, not as losses that demand response, but as adjustments that feel natural. Emotional well-being becomes less about engagement and more about manageability. Less about resonance and more about stability. The danger is not in calm itself. Calm can be deeply nourishing. The risk lies in assuming that calm tells the whole story. That if life feels steady, nothing meaningful has shifted beneath the surface. Often, this stage does not feel like the beginning of anything. It feels like an arrival. A sense that emotional life has settled into its final shape. And because it feels complete, it rarely invites reflection. Yet beneath this baseline of fine, there are changes, still unfolding changes, that do not announce themselves, but that quietly shape how experience is felt. Understanding them requires a closer look at what happens when emotional steadiness slowly replaces emotional range, often without being noticed at all. Emotional life does not usually disappear after 60. It changes texture. Feelings still arise, but they often do so with less intensity, less contrast. Moments that once carried a strong emotional charge may now pass with only a mild response. Nothing feels wrong, just quieter. This narrowing of emotional range happens gradually. There is no clear moment when joy becomes less vivid or sadness less sharp. Instead, the highs soften and the lows flatten. Over time, emotional life begins to feel even, steady, and contained. Many describe this as a balance, and in some ways, it is. Part of this shift comes from experience. After decades of living, many situations no longer surprise or unsettle. Patterns are familiar. Outcomes feel predictable. Emotional reactions that once surged now barely ripple. The mind has learned what to expect, and with that knowledge comes restraint. This restraint can feel like growth. There is comfort in not being pulled too far in any direction. Emotional steadiness allows daily life to proceed without disruption. It supports independence. It reduces vulnerability. And for many, it feels like emotional strength. But emotional strength and emotional range are not the same thing. Strength allows one to endure. Range allows one to feel fully. When the range narrows quietly, it is rarely noticed because nothing is missing in an obvious way. Life still works. What often changes first is the depth of response. A pleasant event registers as pleasant, but does not linger. A meaningful interaction is appreciated, but not carried forward. Emotional experiences begin and end quickly, leaving little residue behind. This can alter how time is experienced. Days feel smooth but indistinct. One week blends into the next. Without strong emotional markers, memory becomes less textured. Life feels continuous, but less defined by moments that stand out. Importantly, this shift does not create distress. There is no longing for intensity. In fact, many feel relief at not being emotionally stirred as often. Intensity is associated with earlier stages of life, busy, demanding, sometimes overwhelming. The quieter emotional landscape feels appropriate for this phase, yet emotional richness is not the same as emotional turbulence. It is possible to feel deeply without feeling distressed. When the range narrows, its depth can diminish without anyone noticing its absence. Another reason this change goes unrecognized is comparison. Emotional life is measured against extremes. If one is not sad, anxious, or overwhelmed, the assumption is that all is well. Subtler shifts do not fit into these categories. They exist in the middle ground where language is less precise. The mind adapts quickly to this new normal. What once felt muted becomes familiar. Emotional neutrality is no longer contrasted with anything else. It becomes the reference point. Without contrast, there is little reason to question it. This narrowing does not happen in isolation. It shapes how experiences are interpreted. Events feel less personal. Reactions feel more distant. Life is observed more than absorbed. And because this observation is calm, it is rarely challenged. Emotional steadiness can be a gift. It offers resilience and peace. But when steadiness quietly replaces range, something subtle shifts in how life is felt. Understanding this shift does not require alarm. It requires attention. As emotional responses soften, the way connection is experienced also begins to change. Feelings are not only internal, they are shaped through relationships. When emotional range narrows, connection can start to feel different as well, even when the people around remain the same. Connection after 60 often appears intact. People are still present. Conversations still happen. Family gatherings, phone calls, casual exchanges with neighbors, all of these continue. On the surface, there is no clear absence. And yet, many notice that the connection no longer feels as anchoring as it once did. What changes is not the presence of others, but the quality of emotional engagement within those interactions. Conversations tend to stay practical. Updates are exchanged. Information moves back and forth efficiently. There is warmth, politeness, even affection, but less emotional resonance. Interactions end without leaving much behind. This shift is subtle because it does not involve rejection or conflict. There is no sense of being pushed away. Instead, there is a quiet thinning of shared emotional space. One is included, but not deeply met. Heard, but not fully registered. Part of this comes from changing roles. After 60, many relationships no longer revolve around shared responsibilities or joint effort. Fewer situations require emotional coordination, fewer decisions made together, fewer challenges navigated side by side. Without these shared points of engagement, connection becomes lighter. There is also a change in how much of one's inner life is offered. Over time, many become more selective about what they share. Thoughts feel less urgent to express. Feelings are processed privately, not out of secrecy, but out of habit. When emotional life becomes quieter internally, it naturally appears quieter externally as well. Others respond to this shift without realizing it. When someone presents as self-contained and emotionally steady, there is less invitation to explore. Further, questions become fewer. Conversations stay within comfortable boundaries. The relationship adjusts to the emotional cues it receives. This adjustment is mutual and often unconscious. No one decides to connect less deeply. It simply becomes easier to stay on the surface. Over time, surface-level interaction becomes the norm, even in long-standing relationships. What makes this especially difficult to notice is that the connection is still happening. Loneliness, as it is commonly imagined, involves isolation. This experience does not. It involves being present without being fully engaged, being known in outline, but not in depth. Emotional engagement depends on exchange. It grows when inner experiences are shared and reflected. When fewer inner experiences are offered because they feel muted, contained, or unnecessary, the space for engagement naturally shrinks. Connection becomes more observational than participatory. This can alter how relationships feel internally. Time spent with others may be pleasant, but not nourishing. There is no discomfort, but there is less vitality. Interactions do not draw one outward or inward in the same way. They pass smoothly, without friction or imprint. Many adapt to this without resistance. Expectations adjust. Relationships are appreciated for what they are, rather than questioned for what they are not. There is dignity in this acceptance. It preserves harmony and avoids unnecessary strain. Yet adaptation has a cost. When emotional engagement thins, the sense of being fully alive within a relationship can fade. One is connected, but less entwined, present, but less affected. This change does not feel like a loss. There is nothing concrete to point to. No person has disappeared. No bond has been broken. And because nothing has ended, there is nothing to grieve. But something has shifted in how connection is felt. It no longer anchors experience in the same way. It supports daily life, but does not shape it as deeply as this becomes familiar. The mind begins to register small internal cues, moments of distance, neutrality, or emotional quiet that arise without clear cause. These cues are easy to dismiss, yet they carry information. Understanding them requires attention not to what is missing externally, but to what is being quietly signaled from within. The mind rarely signals change in obvious ways. Especially later in life, it tends to communicate softly through small shifts that do not interrupt daily function. These signals are easy to overlook because they do not feel urgent. They feel ordinary. After 60, many people become skilled at maintaining equilibrium. Emotional reactions are managed quickly. Discomfort is absorbed without drama. This ability is often the result of long experience, and it serves life well. But it also means that the mind's quieter messages can pass unnoticed. One of these signals appears as emotional neutrality. Moments that might once have stirred reflection now pass without much internal response. Not because they lack meaning, but because the mind no longer amplifies them. This neutrality feels efficient. It keeps life smooth. And because it does not hurt, it rarely raises concern. Another signal shows up in attention. The mind may wander more easily during conversations or activities that once held focus. Engagement is present, but partial. One listens, responds, participates, yet a portion of awareness remains slightly detached. This detachment is not a distraction. It is a gentle distancing that feels calm, not restless. There are also changes in how anticipation works. Looking forward to events may feel quieter than it once did. Plans are made without much emotional build-up. The future is approached with acceptance rather than excitement. This can feel like maturity, but it also reflects a shift in how the mind invests emotionally. Memory offers another clue. Experiences are remembered accurately, but without strong emotional color. They are recalled as facts rather than felt moments. This does not indicate a decline. It reflects a mind that is processing experience with less emotional intensity. These signals are subtle because they do not disrupt functioning. Life continues. Responsibilities are handled. Independence remains intact. There is no sense of something being wrong. And so the mind's quieter communications are treated as background noise rather than information. Part of the reason these signals go unnoticed is expectation. Later life is often associated with calm, restraint, and acceptance. When emotional life becomes quieter, it fits the expected narrative. The mind assumes this is simply how things are meant to be now. There is also a lack of language. These experiences do not fit easily into common emotional categories. They are not sadness, not anxiety, not dissatisfaction. They exist in a middle space that is harder to describe. Without words, they are easier to ignore. Importantly, These signals are not warnings in the traditional sense. They are not alarms. They are indicators, gentle adjustments in how the mind relates to experience. They suggest change, not crisis. The challenge is that awareness usually follows disruption. When something breaks down, attention is forced. But here, nothing breaks. The mind adapts smoothly. Signals remain quiet because they are not competing with distress. Over time, this quiet communication becomes part of the internal environment. It is lived with rather than examined. The mind continues to function well, even as it subtly reshapes how experience is felt. Understanding these signals does not require fixing them. It begins with noticing them as information rather than dismissing them as background. Awareness does not need urgency to be meaningful. Often, this awareness comes latent because the signals were absent, but because they never demanded recognition. They were present all along, woven into daily life, waiting to be understood in their own time. Understanding emotional well-being after 60 rarely arrives with clarity in the moment. It comes gradually, often long after the changes have settled into place. There is no clear point of realization, no instant recognition that something has shifted. Awareness develops quietly, shaped by reflection rather than interruption. This delay happens because the changes explored so far do not disrupt life. They refine it. Emotional steadiness, narrower range, lighter connection, subtle mental signals, all of these allow daily life to continue smoothly. Independence is preserved. Dignity remains intact. There is nothing forcing attention inward. Without discomfort, there is little reason to question experience. Life appears orderly. Needs are met. Routines function. The mind interprets this stability as confirmation that all is well. Emotional well-being becomes something assumed rather than examined. When understanding begins to form, it often starts as a gentle noticing, a realization that days feel quieter than they once did. Those moments pass without lingering. That emotional life feels contained in a way that is neither troubling nor deeply satisfying. These recognitions do not arrive as conclusions. They arrive as pauses. Many encounter this awareness while looking back rather than looking forward. Memory provides contrast that daily life does not. Earlier periods are recalled not as better or worse, but as fuller. There is a recognition that emotional engagement once occupied more space, more texture. This comparison is not made with regret, but with curiosity. Importantly, this understanding does not demand change. There is no instruction attached to it, no problem to solve. It simply reframes experience. What once felt like neutral calm is seen more clearly as a particular emotional state shaped by time, adaptation, and circumstance. This reframing can feel grounding. It restores context. It allows emotional well-being to be understood as something dynamic rather than fixed. Not lost, not broken, but altered. An alteration does not carry judgment. There is also relief in realizing that these shifts are not personal failures. They are not signs of weakness or decline. They are common, human responses to long life, accumulated experience, and changing emotional demands. Understanding removes the sense of isolation that often accompanies unexamined experience. At the same time, this awareness does not restore what has changed. Emotional life does not suddenly regain its earlier intensity. Connection does not automatically deepen. The narrowing does not reverse itself simply because it has been named. Understanding is not resolution. And yet, understanding changes how experience is held. It allows emotional well-being to be approached with honesty rather than assumption. Calm is no longer mistaken for completeness. Quiet is no longer taken as final. This shift in perspective can be subtle but meaningful. It brings attentiveness back into emotional life without introducing urgency. It opens space for noticing, for curiosity, for gentle presence. Not in pursuit of fixing anything, but in honoring what is. For many, this is where the story settles not with answers, but with clarity. With the recognition that emotional well-being after 60 is not a static state, but a landscape that continues to evolve quietly. There is dignity in this awareness. It respects the life that has been lived and the mind that has adapted. It does not seek to return to what was, nor does it dismiss what is. It simply allows experience to be seen more fully, and often that recognition arrive in late, softly. Without drama is enough. It does not resolve every question, but it restores a sense of being present within one's own inner life. Not as a conclusion, but as a deeper understanding of what has been unfolding all along.